How cruel can a 19-year-old college girl be? This young woman, a student from the Tourism and Cultural Studies College of Yunnan University, was named the female version of Ma Jiajue. For those who doesn't know Ma Jiajue was a notorious Chinese criminal who made headlines in 2004 for brutally murdering 4 of his college roommates at Yunnan University. So this girl, she looked sweet and innocent, like she wouldn't hurt a fly. But in reality, she worked as a hostess in nightclub, and she has a very sophisticated agenda. To get money from her wealthy sugar daddy, she teamed up with her boyfriend and his friend. Together, they tortured the man by sticking toothpicks under his nails, or to force him to give up his bank card's passwords. After taking the money, they killed him to cover their tracks, strangling him to death. Then, they did the unthinkable. They dismembered their body into 260 pieces. As if that wasn't horrifying enough, she recorded the entire crime on video. This is Charles. Today I'll take you through the shocking story of the Yunnan University girl who betrayed her sugar daddy in the most horrifying way. On the night of December 19, 2007, 39-year-old Mu Hongzhang went to visit a sick friend at the hospital. After that, he vanished without a trace. Mu, an engineer from the Lijiang Highway construction team, was the backbone of his family. His wife and kids relied on him for everything. He was known as a responsible man, loving toward his wife and never one to stay out late. Even on nights when he had to attend social events, he always made it home by 11 p.m. On that evening, his wife called him twice, and both times his phone was on, but he didn't answer. After that, his phone was turned off. His sudden disappearance left her anxious and worried. His wife reached out to everyone she could think of, friends, colleagues, anyone who might know where he was, but no one had any answers. Worried that something might have gone horribly wrong, she went to the police the next day to file a missing person report. She told the officer that while she was aware her husband's social circle included men who weren't exactly clean cut, some even had mistress and stay out late. But Mu Hongzhang wasn't like that. She firmly believed he had never betrayed her or their family. For him to not come home that night, something bad must have happened. With this information, the police immediately began their search. On December 21, they found Mu's car, a dark plaid SUV, parked in a remote area near Yuhe village on the outskirts of Lijiang. The car was about 300 meters from a nightclub called Heaven on Earth. When police spoke to local residents, they learned that the car had been parked there since the night Mu went missing. This suggested that after visiting his friend at the hospital, Mu had driven to this area and never left. The next day, December 22, a local resident called the police to report a horrible discovery. What looked like human remains stuffed in a bag had been found floating in the moat of Yulong County. When police arrived, they found a bag containing chunks of human flesh. It was immediately clear that was just part of the body. Whoever the killer was had cut it into multiple pieces and dumped them into different locations. The police launched a thorough search of the moat and soon received several black plastic bags. The stench was overwhelming. Officers had to hold their breaths as they opened the bags, only to find them filled with more pieces of human flesh. After a forensic examination, it was confirmed that remains came from the single male body. DNA testing later identified the victim as Mu Hongzhang. So, who killed Mu Hongzhang and why? The police launched a detailed investigation, determined to find out who was behind Mu Hongzhang's death. They discovered that before Mu went missing, he had been driven an SUV, which was later found parked near the nightclub called Heaven on Earth. When officers visited the nightclub, they learned that Mu Hongzhang was actually a regular customer. He was known to spend a lot of money, and pretty much everyone recognized him. The staff also mentioned that Mu Hongzhang had a close relationship with a 19-year-old college student named Zhang Chao. Or another way of saying, Zhang Chao was Mu's mistress. It wasn't until the moment that Mu's wife realized her husband had been unfaithful to her all along. Further investigation revealed that Mu Hongzhang's bank account had some unusual activity. Large amounts of money were being withdrawn, which raised even more red flags. To gather evidence, the police pulled the surveillance footage from the ATM, and what they found was telling the person was drawing the cash was Zhang Chao. On December 23, 2007, police arrested Zhang Chao, During questioning, she confessed she wasn't working alone. Her boyfriend, Xie Hong, and his friend, Chen Guanglu, were also involved. Together, the three of them admitted to robbing, killing, and disposing of Mu Hongzhang's body. But what exactly happened between them and Mu Hongzhang, and why did it lead to such a tragic ending? To understand what happened, we need to go back to where it all started, with this 19-year-old nightclub girl, Zhang Chao. Zhang Chao was born in 1988 in Miyun, Beijing. Despite being from Beijing, her family's situation wasn't exactly glamorous. In fact, in a city where everything cost a fortune, she didn't even have a place to truly call home, barely a roof over her head. Her parents were constantly nagging her and over-supervising her during her childhood, which she found unbearable. So when her college entrance exams were over, even though her scores weren't great, she was happy. Finally, she could get away from her parents. In September 2006, Zhang Chao became a student in Yunnan University's Tourism and Cultural Studies College in China. In China, the tuition for third-tier schools is generally higher than other universities, often costing 30 to 50,000 RMB a year. This was a heavy burden on her already struggling family. Zhang Chao was quite attractive, good-looking, and she took great care in her appearance, always wanting the best clothes, jewelry, and the bags. But of course, all of this required money. So soon after starting university, Zhang Chao frequently called her parents, complaining that she didn't have enough money. Hearing the helplessness in their voice, she started to understand that her family couldn't afford the lifestyle she wanted. Things only got worse when halfway through her first semester, the coal mining company her parents worked for shut down. Both of her parents lost their jobs, and the family income collapsed. Now, it wasn't just about Zhang Chao wanting to enjoy life. Paying her tuition became a problem too. Most students at her college came from well-off families. It was normal for them to spend as much they want. When her classmates talk about makeup or the latest fashion clothes, Zhang Chao felt completely out of place, unable to join in these conversations. It made her miserable. Over time, Zhang Chao's desire for money grew stronger and stronger. Part-time jobs became popular on campus at that time. Handing out flyers, working as a cashier, or waiting tables were typical jobs that didn't require much experience. And many students made a few hundred or even 1,000 RMB a month this way. But for Zhang Chao, this small amount of money wasn't nowhere near enough to satisfy her growing appetite. In 2007, an older student introduced her to nightclub work. Zhang Chao barely hesitated before deciding to work part-time as a hostess at Heaven on Earth, a nightclub near her school. Her reason for choosing this line of work was simple. The money came fast. According to her colleagues, as a hostess, her earning came from several different sources. Tips from each room she attended, starting at 200 RMB. Requests to accompany guests for the night, starting at 1,000 RMB. Additional tips and gifts from guests, with a few regular clients and a wealthy regular customer. It wasn't unrealistic to make tens of thousands a month. At the time, Zhang Chao never imagined that two of the most important men in her life would appear this fast. It didn't take long for Zhang Chao to just realize how tough this job was. She learned the hard way after just a few days. Uncooperative clients, strict managers, and the pressure to sell drinks all made things difficult for her. This was a far cry from the comfort she was used to growing up. At one time, when she was in a tight spot dealing with a rude customer, a young man named Xie Hong stepped in to help Zhang Chao. Xie Hong, who was 6 years older than Zhang Chao, worked at the club as a male host. After this hero saves the day moment, Zhang Chao quickly fell for the charming Xie Hong. And by May 2007, they were in a relationship. It didn't take long for Zhang Chao to realize that Xie Hong's earnings were not as much as she had imagined. They barely covered their basic needs. This led to constant arguments about money. Zhang Chao had always been the one with a strong sense of vanity, and seeing Xie Hong's lack of ambition made her more dissatisfied. For not so long, Mu Hongzhang entered Zhang Chao's life. She was immediately struck by Mu Hongzhang's wealth. Not his personality, but his money. Within 2 months of their meeting at Heaven on Earth, Mu Hongzhang had already given her 70 to 80,000 RMB in cash, not to mention the various gifts. Seeing such an opportunity, Zhang Chao wasn't about to let it slip away. Whenever Mu Hongzhang came to the club, she would rush to serve his private room, affectionately call him Brother Mu. Before long, the two of them became more than just the customer and the server. So at this point, Zhang Chao seemed to forget that she already had a boyfriend. What was even more surprising was Xie Hong's reaction when he found out about Mu Hongzhang. Instead of being jealous or angry, he gently began to explain his philosophy about the importance of money, that our relationship can step aside under this opportunity. Under Xie Hong's guidance, Zhang Chao's desire for wealth only grew. She started listening to Xie Hong's suggestions and began getting closer to Mu Hongzhang. By June 2007, just a month after she began dating Xie Hong, Zhang Chao had become Mu Hongzhang's mistress. Mu Hongzhang didn't have much time to spend with her, though he had a job and a family to avoid arousing suspicions. So most of the time, Zhang Chao was still hanging out with Xie Hong. Mu, however, was generous. Zhang Chao received 30,000 RMB from him each month as a mistress fee, an amount that was equivalent to what many people earn in an entire year. For a while, this strange three-way relationship seemed stable, but something happened that eventually tore this arrangement apart and led to a terrible outcome. One day, Zhang Chao found out by chance that Mu Hongzhang had a bank card with 3 million RMB on it. This temptation of that kind of money was too much for her. Greed took over. She began to plotting ways to get her hands on that money. But Mu Hongzhang wasn't an easy target. He was experienced and saw through Zhang Chao's little tricks, like they were nothing. Then a small incident pushed things over the edge. One day in the latter half of the 2007, Mu Hongzhang was playing mahjong with some friends and he was on a losing streak. To try his luck, he called Zhang Chao over to help. He ended up winning him 120,000 RMB in just a few rounds. Mu Hongzhang was thrilled and rewarded her with 20,000 RMB. But Zhang Chao's face fell. She couldn't believe she'd helped him win so much and ended up with just a little small portion. She thought she deserved way more. That night, back at the apartment, Zhang Chao's complained to Xie Hong, even mentioning Mu Hongzhang's bank card with 3 million RMB on it. Xie Hong was originally going to comfort her as usual, but when he heard about the money, he started thinking differently. And so, Zhang Chao and Xie Hong came up with a plan to take the money. Xie Hong, being cautious, thought they needed more help and decided to bring in his friend, Chen Guanglu. In early December 2007, Zhang Chao and Xie Hong traveled to Kunming to meet Chen Guanglu. They lied to him, saying that Mu Hongzhang owed them money and they needed his help to get it back. They even offered him a generous cut. Hearing that it was about collecting a debt, and since it was his friends asking, Chen Guanglu agreed without much hesitation. Zhang Chao and Xie Hong then shared part of their plan with Chen. According to the plan, Zhang Chao would first invite Mu Hongzhang to her apartment. Then Xie and Chen would show up. If Mu Hongzhang willingly handed over the money, they'd take it and leave. And if he refused, they'd rough him up. On December 17, 2007, Chen Guanglu arrived in Lijiang to join them. Over the next 2 days, he and Xie Hong bought the necessary tools for the crime: robes, gloves, bags, hats, and more. They also got 2 unregistered SIM cards to hide their identities. When they meet up with Zhang Chao, they handed one of the SIM cards to her. On the afternoon of December 19, Zhang Chao began sending texts and making calls to Mu Hongzhang using this new number, inviting him to come over to her apartment. At around 8 p.m., Mu Hongzhang showed up at Zhang Chao's place. As soon as Mu stepped into the room, a knife was pressed against his neck. Xie Hong had been waiting behind the door. Before Mu Hongzhang could react, Chen Guanglu came out from the shadows and quickly tied his hand and feet with a rope. They shoved a towel in his mouth to keep him quiet and took the 2,000 RMB in cash and several bank cards from his pockets. Following Zhang Chao's instructions, Xie used the knife to threaten Mu Hongzhang, while Zhang Chao used toothpicks, jabbing them under Mu Hongzhang's nails until he finally gave up his bank card passwords. With this information in hand, they also took Mu Hongzhang's ID, driver's license, and car keys, then switched off his phone. The plan was then set in motion. Xie and Chen stayed behind to watch Mu Hongzhang while Zhang Chao went to withdraw the money. To avoid being recognized, Zhang Chao wore a hat and a mask. But no matter how much they planned, they hadn't considered the limits. The ATMs only allow a maximum of withdrawal of 20,000 RMB per day. Even if they had Mu Hongzhang's card with millions in it, they couldn't get it all, one time, in one go. Zhang Chao returned to the apartment with just 20,000 RMB. Mu Hongzhang thought that now they had the money, they would let them go. But Xie Hong had other ideas. He argued that if they let Mu Hongzhang go, he would definitely call the police, and the only way to avoid that was to kill him and destroy the evidence. So, the three of them used the knee-long rope to strangle Mu Hongzhang. Then, they carried his body to the bathroom, where they used knives to cut him into over 260 pieces, packing the remains with black plastic bags. To make sure the body parts would sink, they added stones to the bags. Xie Hong then drove Mu's SUV with the three of them heading to the moat in Yulong County. There, they dumped the bags into the water. Early in the morning of December 20, after disposing of the body, Zhang Chao disguised herself again and withdrew another 20,000 RMB from a nearby ATM. Meanwhile, Xie Hong drove Mu Hongzhang's cars to a remote pass near Heaven on Earth and abandoned it there. On December 24, 2007, all three were arrested. While in custody, Zhang Chao wrote a 4,000-word letter in an attempt to defend herself, claiming she had no idea about the plan to kill Mu Hongzhang. She said she wasn't told about the tools they bought. Xie Hong even tried to pass notes to Zhang Chao, suggesting they pin the blame on Chen Guanglu, saying he was the one behind the killing. However, the police found out, and it became clear that Xie Hong had been the mastermind behind the entire crime. On June 4, 2008, the Lijiang Intermediate People's Court sentenced Xie Hong to death. Chen Guanglu and Zhang Chao were given death sentence with a 2-year reprieve. In life, we often find ourselves caught up in a whirlwind of desires. Sometimes it's for material things, sometimes it's for emotional needs, and other times it's the pursuit of success. Desire can be a powerful motivation. It can push us to achieve more and strive for better. But just as often, it can become a burden, even leading us down a path of destructions. The story of Zhang Chao, Xie Hong, and Mu Hongzhang is a grim reminder of what happens when we let our desires completely consume us. The craving for more money drove them to commit acts they could never undo. Greed clouded their judgment, and their lack of control led to irreversible consequences. It's important for all of us to learn how to manage our desires. That doesn't mean we need to eliminate them entirely. It's more about finding the balance and keeping our heads on straight while pursuing our goals. Only by doing that can we truly take control of our lives and live in a way that has meaning and value. I'm Charles, dedicated to bring you in-depth case analysis. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification button. Have a case you would like me to share? Feel free to share it in the comment sections. I'll see you next time.